1995, Bellevue, Washington. It's taken as axiomatic by academic scribblers that men affiliate upward and women downward. Need proof? Watch children on a playground while the girls play inclusionary games that draw in playmates of every strata. Boys play exclusionary games that weed out the weak and elevate the strong. Critics of the notion this behavior generalizes to all other spheres point out that in the bed, men affiliate down, mating with lower status women, while women affiliate up, mating with higher status men. And so in the sack, at least, this axiom of human behavior is not, well, axiomatic. Does that really matter? Well, to lower status men, it can matter a great deal. So what? Who cares what the millions of lower status men feel? Certainly not feminists, not women, and never higher status men. Or do they? What do we see male leaders doing? Well, the simple fact is we see them affiliating down. Leaders affiliate in all directions, up, down, side to side, what our academic scribblers might call vertical and lateral associations, because that's what it takes to lead. And here's the thing, from boys on a baseball team to men at the helm of the largest corporations, they all do this because you need teams to get things done, and as every leader knows, that's what it takes to create and lead teams, or at least teams of men. If our academic scribblers were to take the perspective of a leader, they would begin to see lots and lots of high-status men affiliating with lower-status men because men can't elevate their status without the consent, support, and active cooperation of other men. Men of both higher and lower status. Okay, so the feminist complaint that men are brutes who don't care much for and who eschew lower-status folk is baloney. Big deal. Why should we care? Well, it has to do with networks. Whom you work with, how, and how women can take your job away and justify impoverishing you in the name of feminism. Or if not actually sending you to the poorhouse, then at least stonewalling your career advancement through the Good Ol' Girls network. Most of us know about Good Ol' Boys networks. Feminists do, and they've spent years creating Good Ol' Girls networks, women who work together to promote one another's careers. Networking is, in and of itself, neither good nor bad. It all depends on what you do with it. Hitler's network of good old boys killed lots and lots of people. That was bad. The TV networks brought us Donahue, Oprah, and so on. That was bad. Oh, wait, different kind of network. Sorry. But workplace networks have also brought us informal lines of communication that ignore hierarchical and departmental boundaries. These are mostly good. Without them, companies quickly rigidify into stagnation. Men have been networking like that for millennia. We have traditions, myths, and mores that instruct our participation. Moreover, unlike feminists, we even have a tradition of networking with our enemies. When Lee Marvin, for example, needed to storm the gates of Nazi hell, he formed alliances with lesser scum, the Dirty Dozen, and triumphed over otherwise superior forces. When Hitler needed to erect the gates of Nazi hell for our hero to storm, he embraced his enemies, making them generals and lieutenants in his organization, and in the process revitalized his nation in a way that, in another milieu, might have been called a marvel, but in our own, in some ways more enlightened age, became the German sorrow. When men need to move mountains, they surround themselves with friends and foes alike. After Abraham Lincoln became President of the United States, the first thing he did was to appoint his adversaries to cabinet posts. When promoting our best interests is in the best interests of our foes, they become our allies, if not our friends. We work together, and we rise or fall together. Those who ignore or attempt to sweep aside their lesser adversaries not only miss the opportunity to gain new allies, but also risk turning otherwise minor opponents into dedicated enemies. That's precisely what many feminists are doing with their good old girl networks, turning otherwise sympathetic women and men into enemies. Not that they aren't pragmatic about forming alliances. Take Senator Bob Packwood, for example. A finer example of everything feminists say they despise could hardly have been found, yet during the past several years, feminist organizations supported him because he was a powerful man who was willing to sell his integrity to get what they offered. their political support, and a ticket to stick his tongue where it ought not to have been. Feminatics flocked to cuddle in his embrace no matter how much they despised him, his behavior, or his politics. But they have opposed to the point of oppression any man of lesser status, even those who by word or deed have supported equal rights, for no greater crime than giving them less than full support. Are they mad or merely stupid? Or have they really become so powerful as to no longer need the support of the individually insignificant males? Carol Gilligan, author of In a Different Voice, might argue that this is just the way women network. That they don't ally themselves with adversaries because the small, inclusive female cliques are based not on goals or getting things done, but are an end in and of themselves. Thus, the female corporate director who surrounds herself with members of her clique is not doing so for the sake of promoting the general welfare of that organization, but rather is director of that organization for the sake of creating and expanding her clique. In other words, it's a process rather than goal-oriented. In The Female Advantage, Women's Ways of Leadership, Sally Helgeson essentially puts forth the argument that this actually does promote the goals of the organization because if you take care of the process, the goals will more or less take care of themselves. For example, if you breed horses and you train and drive them hard to win races, you may have yourself a winner, but one that may not last very long, and all your other horses will be losers. Take that same horse, so the reasoning goes, put it to pasture with a herd of others, don't push any of them to excel too hard, and even if you don't have number one, all of them may still consistently earn you money in place or show, or even in plodding and harness pulling a plow. But what of the studs who are ready to race? What are you going to do with them? Slaughter them for dog food while the goal-oriented companies keep their studs in saddle and race ahead for as long as their own feminist warlordettes will let them before turning them into dog food too? Is that all most men are to feminists, and most women? Dog food? Well, women also have their long-standing traditions, myths, and mores that instruct their participation in good old girl networks that were and remain essential to human survival. No, seriously. My paternal grandmother used to tell us how, during the Great Depression, she and her fellow housewives, which had a very different meaning than it has today, used these networks to keep entire communities together. These networks had a different focus than men's, but in today's modern corporations, they could be just as effective, productive, and equally important. No, the problem is not women in general, and I'm not talking here about hypergamy, which we really weren't talking about very much back then, but feminist fanatics, those who hate men, believe women are superior to men, and who merely see feminism as a means to power and don't care whom they trample or how so long as they can get away with it. Either way, it's a problem for corporations, of course, because in the long run, these types of good old girl networks are undermining morale and may even be a factor in the lower than expected rates of productivity gains that the U.S. economy has had since the 1970s, which coincides with the rise in power of the feminists. Feminists will scoff at this, of course, as they do at all criticism, and our academic scribblers will squint, scratch, and blink in bemusement, but regardless of what impact they may or may not have had on productivity, they're a threat to most men and a problem in progress for most women, because women are going to be, indeed are already being, stereotyped by their egregious behaviors. When the dynamics of social revolution eventually reverse, as they ultimately will, the fanatics of that coming day will use this against women. For this reason, if no other, women need to oppose and expose them before it's too late. Corporate executives will stop catering to the whining of the feminists, stop worrying about offending the easily offended, and assertively expect their employees to act like adults instead of petulant children. The politics of the playground have no place in the workplace. Women who work with feminist whiners will need to stop tolerating the whining, chide their whiny coworkers into more adult behaviors, and otherwise refuse to participate in making victimization a cause célèbre. Thanks to feminism, the workplace is changing. Some of these changes are more or less benign, but for some oddball reason, everyone seems to assume if it's someone who calls herself a feminist advocating it, then the change, whatever it may be, must automatically be good. That would be laughable but for the very serious harm some of these changes inflict on most men and many women. In his book Loyalty, George Fletcher cautions us to, quote, never treat anyone merely as a means, but always as an end in himself or herself, close quote. Great advice feminists are ignoring to their own detriment and ours. That's all for now. Check out the other videos, subscribe to the channel. For the Backlash at Backlash.com, my name is Rod Van Mechelen.